Eventually they become the shareholder, and eventually you see all of them or few of them, they become directors to act on behalf of the company. All right. Uh, Section 4 talks about the kinds of registered companies. You see, the kinds of registered companies are three. A public company. Previous to the Act of 2017, like in the Companies Act of 1913 and in the Companies Ordinance 1984, you see there were the companies were called as public limited companies and private limited companies. Okay, but now under the present Companies Act of 2017, the companies are called private companies and public. So private company means private limited company. Public company means public limited company. We would be calling it private companies and public companies. How they can form? What are the requirements? Section 14 tells you the requirements about the forming of a company. So far as public company is concerned, it can be formed, section says, by any three or more persons associated for any lawful purpose by subscribing their names to the memorandum of association uh, and complying with the requirements of this act in respect of registration for a public company. Okay. So what are the requirements? First of all, the number of people who want to create a company, a public company, must be three. This is minimum. Number two requirement, according to this section, this provision is that the creation of this company must be for a lawful purpose. Okay, for a law, the purpose must be lawful. Number three is that name must be subscribed. Meaning the memorandum of association must be signed by these people. And all the requirements provided in Act of 2017 must be fulfilled. This is the requirement. Requirement are for there are three categories of registered company: private companies, public limited company, and single member companies. So requirements of you see lawful purpose, the requirement of subscription of promoters on the memorandum of this association, and the requirement of fulfillment of all the requirements of registration are one and same. Only the number of members is different. Like to create a private company, at least two persons. I mean, minimum number of members in a private company is two. Minimum 2% must fulfill all the requirements. Then they will be able to register to get registration of a private company. Number three is single member company. This is a new idea which was introduced in the previous year. That a single member company, a single person can be given a status of company. So for a single member company, there must be a one person. I mean, it's silly to think of a company having no member. Here, the number, all the requirements plus one member at least. So in this way, a private limit, a public limit, a public company, a private company, and single member company can be easily can be registered. Coming to the formation of company, how a company is formed, what are the requirements? The requirements under Section 14 are four documents. Four documents. You see, for applying for the registration of a company, you in future, being an executive in a trade organization, sometime you will be needing to register, to get a company registered for your organization, or you would be supervising the process of registration of company. So you must know what are the requirements. Requirement number one, or document number one, for the purpose of registration of company is a declaration. A declaration must be given by the promoters to by the subscribers of to the memorandum of association, that they have fulfilled all the requirements, they have paid the fees, they have fulfilled the requirements of registration. This is document number one. Document number two is memorandum of association. I have already told you that memorandum of association is the most important document in registration of the company. It is a constitution of company having each and every small and big detail about the company's activities, its business, you see, etc. etc. So this has to be prepared. And number two is article of association. Another document. Article of association are bylaws. You see, bylaws to regulate the internal affairs. A memorandum of association, you see, regulates the relation of a company with outer world. While articles of association, they regulate the internal affairs of the company, like how the board, how the directors would be chosen, how the business would be run, how the dividend would be paid. Internal administration is regulated by the article of association. This is document number two. Document number three is address of the company in written form, signed by all the promoters. You see, a document must be submitted with the application for registration, which shows the address, official address, the postal address of the company. All right. So this is about the four essential documents which are needed for incorporation of the companies. Now coming to document, the most important document which is needed for incorporation of the company, for registration of the company, which is called Memorandum of Association. I have to speed up because we have just 10 minutes. I have already told you that it is the most important document and it has to be drafted very carefully. That's why you see people who are interested in the registration of the company, you see, they take it to the lawyer. There are specialized lawyers who draft, you see, memorandum of association. It has got different, and no company, I mean, it's obvious that no company can be registered under the Companies Act 2017 without the memorandum of association. Whether it is single member company, or it's private company, or it's public company, it is essential to have, you see, a memorandum of association drafted in the best possible way. So this, what is memorandum of association? What are its contents? What information is to be provided in memorandum of association? Let's talk about it hurriedly because of shortage of time. Clause number one is called name clause. Name is essential. Name is essential. There can be no registration without the name. So in name clause, the name should be mentioned, keeping in view all the restrictions of name in the company. It must be proper, it must not be deceptive, it must not be identical, etc., etc. And without a name, no company can be registered. One word has to be added to the word, to the name of the company, is limited. You see, if it is a single member company, so the word limited would be added to it. If it is a public company, just suppose that Khiyaban Groceries Limited, if it is going to be a public company, or Transport Limited. If it is a private company, then Khiyaban Groceries Private, within bracket Limited. This is about the name. And clause number two is domicile form. There are four provinces. There is a GB, there is AJK. So where the company is going to start its business. So its domicile must be mentioned. You see, then the most important clause is the object clause, which has to be drafted extremely carefully. Because once you have mentioned some object, you can't derogate from it. Once the company has decided, once the company has mentioned that it will it will have a business of, producing sugar out of sugar. It will have to stick to business. It cannot start any other business. If it planned to start business of making paper out of the refuse of the sugar cane, it cannot start. It cannot. You see, until and unless it amends its memorandum of association. So, memorandum of association contains the main object of the company to be pursued by the company on its incorporation. What is the main object? The main object is production of sugar out of sugar cane. Number two is objects incidental or ancillary to the attainment of the main sugar. So just suppose that the company is not only going to erect a factory, a sugar factory, but it is going to fan the sugar cane as well. So it must be mentioned that we are going to have farms. The company is going to own farms to grow sugar cane and to grow sugar, etc. You see, or if there is any other object which you can think of, or which is possible that the company would need it, that also be mentioned. You see, why? Because amendment of memorandum of association of the company is more difficult than amendment of Constitution of Pakistan. Why? Because for the Constitution of the amendment of Constitution of Pakistan, you need 2/3 majority. While for the amendment of memorandum of association, you need a minimum three-fourth majority. This is about, then coming to liability clause. What does liability? What would be the liability if the company is limited by shares? If the company is limited by shares, you see, it has to be mentioned that we have this many of shares, this much of shares, and this is the liability. If the company is limited by guarantee, as I told you that in the case of company limited by guarantee, since the company limited by guarantee is not for the trade purpose, is not for the purpose of making profit. That's why you see the members must have must guarantee. So what would be their guarantee? How much money they would provide at the case in the case of winding up of the company. And the last is the next is capital growth. How much capital? It must clearly be mentioned that the company is going to plan its business with 100,000 rupees, and the company has decided to divide its share capital into 1,000 shares. So every share would be of 1,000 rupees. Okay, this is about capital clause. The last is association clause. 5 clauses, and 6th one is, I'm talking about the contents of memorandum of association. What is it? How it can be amended? What is its effect on the business? I'll tell you in the next lesson. But in the present lesson, the last clause of the memorandum of association is association clause. The association clause contains a declaration by the person subscribing. We have already said that it must have been subscribed, signed by the promoters. And promoters, you see, must have signed it in the association clause. And they must, you see, declare that they have fulfilled all the essential requirements for the purpose of registration of the company. With this, I'm going to end, and the remaining 4 minutes for your questions. Okay, come along if you have got a question. Do not hesitate to ask if you haven't understood. It's obvious that you are students of finance and accounting, and this is law, which is very strange for you. You might not, in the first attempt, grasp it and understand it. So try to ask. Do not hesitate. If you have a question, if you haven't understood something, please let me know what's your question. I'm here till 10:35, waiting for your questions. G.